Ready. The words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. As you know, if I were standing at the beginning of time with the possibility of general and panoramic view of the whole human history up till now, and the Almighty said to me, Martin Luther King, which age would you like to live in? I would take my mental flight by Egypt, or rather across the Red Sea, through the wilderness on toward the Promised Land, and in spite of its magnificence, I wouldn't stop there. I would move on by Greece, take my mind to Mount Olympus, and there I would see Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Euripides, and Aristophanes assembled around the Pantheon as they discovered the great and eternal issues of reality. But I wouldn't stop there. I would go on even to the great heyday of the Roman Empire, and I would see developments around there through various emperors and leaders, but I wouldn't stop there. I would even come up to the day of the Renaissance and get a quick picture of all the Renaissance did for the cultural and aesthetic life of man, but I wouldn't stop there. I would even go by the way that the man for whom I'm named had his habitat, and I would watch Martin Luther as he tacked his 95 Theses on the door at the Wittenberg Church, but I wouldn't stop there. I would come on up even to 1863 and watch a vacillating president by the name of Abraham Lincoln finally come to the conclusion that he had to sign the Emancipation Proclamation, but I wouldn't stop there. I would even come up to the early 30s and see a man grappling with the problems of the bankruptcy of his nation and come with an eloquent cry that we have nothing to fear but fear itself. But I wouldn't stop there. Strangely enough, I would turn to the Almighty and say, if you allow me to live just a few years in the second half of the 20th century, I will be happy. Now that's a strange statement to make because the world is all messed up, the nation is sick, trouble is in the land, confusion all around. That's a strange statement. But I know somehow that only when it's dark enough can you see the stars. And I see God working in this period of the 20th century in a way that men in some strange way are responding. Something is happening in our world. And another reason that I'm happy to live in this period is that we have been forced to a point where we're going to have to grapple with the problems that men have been trying to grapple with through history. But the demands didn't force them to do it. Survival demands that we grapple with them. Men for years now have been talking about war and peace, but now no longer can they just talk about it. It is no longer a choice between violence and nonviolence in this world. It's nonviolence or non-existence. That's where we are today. Let us develop a kind of dangerous unselfishness. One day, a man came to Jesus and he wanted to raise some questions about some vital matters in life. At points, he wanted to trick Jesus and show him that he knew a little more than Jesus knew, and through this, throw him off base. Now, that question could have easily ended up in a philosophical and theological debate, but Jesus immediately pulled that question from midair and placed it on a dangerous curve between Jerusalem and Jericho. And he talked about a certain man who fell among thieves. You remember that a Levite and a priest passed by on the other side. They didn't stop to help him. And finally, a man from another race came by. He got down from his beast, decided not to be compassionate by proxy, but with him administered first aid and helped the man in need. Jesus ended up saying, this was the good man. because he had the capacity to project the I into the thou and to be concerned about his brother. Now, you know, we use our imagination a great deal to try to determine why the priest and the Levite didn't stop. At times we say they were busy going to church meetings and ecclesiastical gathering, and they had to get down to Jerusalem so they wouldn't be late for their meeting. At other times we would speculate that there was a religious law that one who had engaged in religious ceremonials was not to touch a human body 24 hours before the ceremony. And every now and then, we begin to wonder whether maybe they were not going down to Jerusalem or down to Jericho, rather to organize a Jericho Road Improvement Association. That's a possibility. Maybe they felt it was better to deal with the problem from the casual route, rather than to get bogged down with an individual effort. But I'm going to tell you, my imagination tells me, it's possible that these men were afraid. You see, the Jericho Road is a dangerous road. I remember when Miss King and I were first in Jerusalem, we rented a car and drove from Jerusalem down to Jericho. And as soon as we got on that road, I said to my wife, I can see why Jesus used this as a setting for his parable. It's a winding, meandering road. It is really conducive for ambushing. You start out in Jerusalem, which is about 1,200 miles, or rather 1,200 feet above sea level. And by the time you get down to Jericho, 15 or 20 minutes later, you're about 2,200 feet below sea level. That's a dangerous road. In the days of Jesus, it came to be known as the Bloody Pass. And you know, it's possible that the priest and the Levite looked over that man on the ground and wondered if the robbers were still around. Or it's possible that they felt the man on the ground was merely faking, and he was acting like he'd been robbed and hurt in order to seize them over there and lure them there for a quick and easy seizure. And so the first question that the Levite asked was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But the Good Samaritan came by, and he reversed the question. If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? That's the question before you tonight. Not if I stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to all the hours that I usually spend in my office every day and every week as a pastor. The question is not, if I stop to help this man in need, what will happen to me? But if I do not stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to them? That's the question. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind, like anybody. I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over. And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you. But I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land. And I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. I think we did it that time.